Hey everybody, how you doing? You got Eric Worrell here and Andrew Schultz. How you doing today, Andrew?
Good. How are you?
Good. So, if you've never seen this
Sorry, I was
before,
just looking to see. I was looking to see if I had a winter hat so that I could match you, but all I have is gloves.
well, you got the big headset on too. It might look kind
Yeah,
of
that's
weird,
true.
but
I'd pull it off.
so this is episode 26. We were debating on that. It might be 27. My records aren't always the
I'm
best.
pretty sure it's 27, but I'm
All
not
right,
sure.
whatever. That's okay. So,
Doesn't matter till you get to 100 anyway.
we got Ask a Property Manager. We're going to be going through some questions. Andrew is a property manager out in the Buffalo, New York area. If you're not familiar, Andrew, how many properties do you manage?
We are managing about 120 doors here in Buffalo and Western New York, kind of from like the greater Lockport area all the way down to South Buffalo.
Yeah, so there's a good chance you've run into these issues. You've had to deal with these issues. These are questions that have come from our Facebook group, Rent Prep for Landlords, and we actually have one today that came from Reddit. And I think we're actually going to start with that one. I'm going to try to add this to the
Okay.
broadcast. We're going to see how it works. Sometimes it likes to get a little wonky, but it seems like it's working today, hopefully. So, taking a look at the first question, Andrew, this is about
hmm
buying a rental property versus buying the LLC that owns the property. This person's in Ohio for
Ooh.
what it's worth. But they said, hello, everyone. I'm looking to buy my first 4-unit apartment building, and I'm exploring different financing options. The seller offered today to sell me the current LLC that owns the property instead of just selling me the property itself. I have no idea what the implications are with this and when it comes to financing. All banks have
Mm-mm.
quoted me the 20% down payment, but I'm wondering if
Mm-mm.
buying the LLC changes the financing structure. So ideally, they'd like lowering the required down payment, even at the risk of a higher interest rate. Any help or direction would be appreciated. So I
Um,
think this is a great question
yeah.
because I have no idea. I haven't seen this come up in our Facebook group either. What's your advice on this between buying rental property versus buying the LLC that owns the rental property?
So there's a couple moving pieces on this question, which is kind of interesting. First of all, don't ever, ever, ever buy somebody else's LLC containing a property. Bad idea.
Okay.
Um, if there's hidden liabilities inside that LLC, and it could be something like an unpaid tax bill or trying to think of some other common things. Maybe they owe a bunch of vendors money or something like that. If you buy that LLC that contains the property, sure, you get the property, but you also get all those liabilities that come along with it. And some of that stuff doesn't surface until after you've already closed the transaction. Just buy the property and form your own LLC. At least that way you know it's a clean, crisp LLC with no, hidden headaches for you coming down the pipeline.
Yeah, and I
Um,
mean, depending on how that LLC was structured, I mean, there might have been set up wrong. I know that we did a
yeah.
podcast
Oh,
with
yeah. Good call. Hmm.
Mark Kohler of Refresh Your Wealth podcast, really informative guy, and he was talking about all the issues that people have when they set up and they go online with like a legal Zoom. A lot of times, people will screw up the way they set it up, and they don't have something correct in there. Meeting notes are
Hmm.
thrown off. There's maybe the paper trail of the meeting notes for the last few years aren't,
Right. Just
accounted
missing.
for.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's a good point. You're probably taking an unnecessary risk buying an LLC versus buying the rental property.
Yeah. Absolutely. Just don't do that. That's not a great idea at all. It's funny this question came up because we actually looked at a commercial development deal in
Hmm.
Amherst, where we are now, or where I am now. We looked at a commercial development deal, and the guy, because of there was a licensing situation involved, and because of the way the license was written, the license had to remain with the corporation.
Okay.
So we would have had to purchase the corporation that contained the property in order to get the license for a continuity of business concern.
Okay.
And when we really looked into it, there were just too many hidden liabilities underlying in the corporation,
Okay.
and that was basically the end of the situation right there.
All right. Well, that's all good knowledge, good things to consider. If you're buying a rental property, avoid buying the LLC. All right.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. It's already on screen here, but we're going to show the next question. We're talking about first, last, and security deposit. This question came in
Mhm.
from Deborah. She said, do you ask for first, last, and security? I used to only ask for first and security, but have gotten burned too often by having tenants illegally using security deposit at last month's rent. So you picked this
Mhm.
question. What was your reasoning for picking this question from Deborah?
So I picked that one. So we have a policy of first and security. So I guess I should back up. Our selection criteria for our apartments is 3 times the rent in net income, so
Mhm.
take home income, and credit score of 620 are our two main requirements.
What?
And then obviously all the others that you would typically see, no evictions and good criminal background, whatever it is.
Yep.
We will do first and security if you meet the 3 times and the 620 credit score.
Okay.
If you're under that 620 credit score, then we usually do first, last, and security, or first and first and a double security deposit or something like that. It depends on your state laws. That's one thing New York doesn't regulate, is how much of a security deposit you can charge.
Yeah.
I'm always more comfortable carrying first and a double security over a first, last, and security. But either way, whatever you can do to get a little bit of extra protection, yeah, try for it. It's state law specific, though. I know some states won't let you charge more than 1 month's rent security.
Yep.
And I think some states don't even let you charge a security anymore.
Yeah, that might be true.
Washington, maybe, like Seattle, Washington area. I can't remember.
I can't recall, but I feel like I have come across that.
Yeah, I think it was somewhere in that area, but yeah, it's
it up a little bit though. I like what you said as far as you have conditions for your tenant screening criteria. So you do the 620 credit score and also 3x their net income, their take home income, and if they pass those, then you'll do first and security deposit. If they don't, you have a condition thrown in that, and you can do this. You can have conditions on your tenant screening. As long as you're consistent with them. If they don't meet the criteria on one of those things, then they have to do last month's rent as well. I like that because you're kind of hedging your bets a little bit, because you're saying this person may be a little bit more at risk because maybe they were only 2.5x for the rent to income ratio, and you wanted that 3x. So now you were requiring that last month's rent as well. But if they can afford it, then you're willing to work with them. So I like that you do.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, so there's just, it's a way to kind of, like you said, hedge your bets, because you really never know until a tenant gets into a situation what the true outcome is going to be of a tenancy. So I mean, if you can hedge your bet a little bit, then yeah, go right for it.
So let's break down the last half of Deborah's question, or at least statement. She said that she's gotten burned too often by having tenants illegally using security deposit as last month's rent. What are your thoughts when you hear that statement?
That happens pretty frequently. You always get tenants that are like, oh, I don't think I'm going to get my deposit back anyway. I'm just going to try to use my security as last month's rent. So the first stop on this is to make sure that your lease specifically states that security cannot be used towards rent or towards last month's rent or something along those lines, that it's meant for specifically for damages and things like that.
Sure.
So that's going to be number one. If the tenant tries to pull a stunt like that, the second they're late, issue a pay or quit notice and then start the eviction proceeding. Yep. You're probably not going to get them out before the end of that month anyway. But if they are already screwing around and not paying you your last month's rent, the chances of them becoming a holdover tenant is pretty substantial. So I would say go ahead and begin that eviction proceeding, whether or not you actually have to wind up in court, or depending on how backed up your court system is, they may be gone by the time that happens anyway. But don't let a tenant push you around like that. Follow your procedures, follow your lease, and make sure that you get your money.
Yeah, if it's in your lease and it's written up correctly, and they're saying we're going to use a security deposit for last month's rent, and you say, no, this is the contract that we have between one another. This is not what it's used for. You point to the lease. It's not even a discussion. I mean, if they want to make it a discussion, then, go to court or whatever. But, just follow the lease, have that ironclad lease, and that'll definitely help you out in that situation.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, at the end of the day, a contract is only as good as the paper that it's written on and the people that signed it. So, I mean, if the tenant's going to try to screw you, the tenant's going to try to screw you regardless. Yeah. As long as you have a way of trying to protect yourself, that's what matters. So it's all about protecting your asset and letting the tenant know, no, you cannot use your security for your last month's rent. You have to play by the rules. Yeah. So chances are they're still not going to pay your last month's rent, but at least you gave it a valiant effort.
Yeah. So moving along to the next question here, we're going to be talking about collecting damages caused by DirecTV. Let me see if I can add this to the screen here and throw it right on screen. Looks like we're good. Yep. All right. So this question came from Bill. He says, has anyone had any luck collecting damages from DirecTV, AT&T for unauthorized installation of a satellite dish? He said that they removed 3 dishes after evicting tenants a while back. but I just noticed
Mhm.
another one today that seems to be attached to the roof in a mostly hidden location. I'm concerned about roof damage. The tenants
Yeah,
seem to have
absolutely.
been burning through TV and internet providers as they were canceled for non-payment.
That sucks. I hate satellite dishes. I really do, because they always mount them on the roof, like right through the shingles. And look, you live in the area, you know what our winters are like. Those freeze thaw cycles wreak havoc on satellite dishes that are mounted to roofs.
Mm-hmm.
The bolts will start to loosen up. You'll start to get water infiltrating around the bolts, and before you know it, you've got a roof leak. You can't say no to, at least my understanding of the current law is, you can't deny someone the right to have a satellite dish,
Okay.
but you can put restrictions on where it's allowed to be placed. So what we do is we have just a general letter that we use, that we hand to tenants, an install letter for the utility providers, telling them you can install it on a pole in the yard only, not on my roof, not on the side of the property. If it's found on the side of the property or on the roof, the tenant's going to get charged for it.
Yeah.
So in theory, the tenant's supposed to have that letter before the satellite dish company comes out to do the install. And if they don't have that letter, then the satellite company's not supposed to do the install, because the tenant doesn't own the house, so they're not authorized to tell them where to mount the satellite dish.
So
in actuality,
yeah,
it happens all the time. It happens all the time where these companies come out, just throw a dish up wherever they want, run it through the side of your house, just drill a hole wherever they feel like it, and then you're stuck in a situation where you have to try to collect funds from them.
Yeah. Have you ever had any success with that, or tried to collect funds from
We
them?
did. Yeah. There's basically what the company up here that does all the subs for DirecTV and Dish Network. Initech, I think it is the subcontractor that does all the installs up here.
I think that's the company from Office Space, Initech.
Initech, Intertech. I don't know,
something like that.
I know where they're on Transit in Lockport, but
I wouldn't exactly
call them Dish Network.
Work, Bob.
Yeah, exactly. I gotta watch that. I haven't watched that in like a year. Anyway, so yeah, basically what you're going to have to do is find out who did the actual install. The easiest way to find that out is to get a hold of your tenant and see if they have any installation paperwork that indicates who the contractor was.
Yep.
If they don't have that information, the next thing you can do is contact the dish company directly. They should be able to. You're going to have to fight with them. Don't get me wrong. It's not going to be easy. You're going to have to fight with them and argue until you get what you need. But they will have to give you the name and number of the company that did the install. At that point, you contact that company and say, hey, you mounted a satellite dish on our property without permission. You punctured holes in our roof. We want to have this repair work done. They'll probably tell you, go get an estimate. What is it going to cost to repair it? And then they cut us a check. They didn't even fight us on it because they knew they were in the wrong. They didn't have the paperwork.
Yeah.
So I've seen other times where people have, they've kind of fought back against them. You can take them to court if it's that much damage, which, I mean, it really could be. If you're talking about a brand new roof or something like that, and then they sit and drill right through the center of a brick as opposed to through a mortar joint. I mean, all these little things add up.
I think you mentioned an important aspect when it comes to satellite dishes, at least in our area. If you get like Fios through Verizon installed,
right.
It's a union rep from Verizon who's coming out, and he doesn't care if it takes him 8 hours to do the job right at your property, which at my house, I got Fios, it puts that long. And but if you are going through some of these third-party subcontractors, they're just trying to get in and out because they're getting paid by the job. And I know that when I got DirecTV installed at my previous residence, which is my rental now, the guy, like, I think he was still drunk from the night before. He left like sawdust everywhere. He left tools. Like, it was just a horrific install. And after getting that install done by Fios too, I was like, wow, this is night and day between who's installing this. So I like the idea of having them install it on a pole in the yard and having that in your lease. So
yeah, exactly. I mean, and it's one of those things where you're probably going to get caught with it at some point. I mean, the companies that are doing these installs, if it's a subcontractor, a lot of times they don't follow the rules that they're supposed to follow, and then it's a chasing game. You kind of have to chase them to get your money for your repairs back out of them. So the other option is, and you should put it in your lease that if there's damages that are caused by somebody that the tenant is hired to do work, which technically the tenant hired these people to install the satellite dish, that the tenant's responsible for that damage. That gives the tenant a little bit of incentive to assist you in going after the install company. So
Okay.
it's you just have to push. That's all it is.
Makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's go to our fourth question of the day here. We were talking about reducing a tenant's rent for maintenance. Let's see what we have here. This came from Jacqueline, and on January 28th, she said, looking for any advice on finding a tenant who would be willing to maintain the upkeep of my 5-unit in return for very low rent. There would be very low maintenance. The property is in awesome condition, and I never have any issues with the property. But I also live an hour and a half away from the property that I own. So she's wondering if there's any services out there or websites where she can advertise either for very low rent or a free apartment in return for property maintenance. She believes that it would still be cheaper than hiring a property manager, and she's just wondering, and she's in Wisconsin. So I'm sure that you have some feelings on this one.
Yeah. Don't do that. All right, I'll preface this by saying I'm not an attorney and you should talk to yours.
Yeah.
By having a tenant do work for a reduced rent, you could be creating an employee-employer relationship, which in turn would mean that you need to have all of the various insurances that go along with having an employee, which would be, in New York State at least, liability insurance, workman's compensation insurance, unemployment insurance, disability insurance, payroll taxes, et cetera, et cetera. You don't want to do this. The other option is, or the other thought is, you could be creating basically an ad hoc contractor situation, which means that the tenant then needs to have at least liability insurance and you need to get a W-9 from them and issue a 1099 back out.
Yeah.
Just don't do it. Charge what you're supposed to charge market rent for the apartment, and hire vendors to do the work that you need vendors to do. Don't use tenant labor. You can create nasty situations in leasing. It can really turn a relationship sour really, really quickly. Don't do it. I've never, ever heard of a good experience that someone has had using a tenant to complete work around the property. The tenant doesn't do the work or doesn't do it to your level of satisfaction. The potential for having an employee or a contractor situation there, it's totally not worth it. There's so many
things are so abstract, right?
Exactly.
He's like, no, this looks great, and you're looking at the line on the wall, and you're like, no, that looks awful, and then you're not going to get that mediated. So then you're just going to either have to, give up on your stance and be okay with it and be annoyed, or
right.
If it's the contractor, you can really, say, hey, this isn't up to standards, and have more of a discussion with it.
Right. Yeah, you've got recourse with a contractor. Yeah. Just don't do it. Just hire vendors if you don't think you need a property manager, if you're able to manage it remotely, then manage it remotely, and just get a couple of contractors or handymen or whatever that you're comfortable with using, insured people to work on your properties. But don't let a tenant do it. Do it the right way. Don't you're going to trip over pennies on this one, and it's going to cost you dollars in the long run. So I would
because what you're suggesting, like, it could work. It could work that she does this, the tenant's fine, the tenant does the repairs, does a good job, everything's fine. And then you get a new tenant and you try this approach again, and that tenant gets injured in the property.
Right.
And now all those things that you just talked about are part of the fold. You're worrying about, do I have all these extra liabilities because of the fact that technically, because of the relationship, they're an employee or something like that, and you didn't have that.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
I hope I'm saying that right. Myriad, and put it on the screen here. She says 100% right. So she agrees with you, Andrew. You got a fan on your policy for contractors. So
nice. Thank you. Yeah. I appreciate that. But yeah, it gets so messy so fast. Just do it the right way. There's so many times that we see it quite a bit on the group and stuff like that, where you'll see people that are obviously trying to cut a corner. And my response is almost always, don't do it. Don't cut that corner. You're going to regret it down the road. Yeah. One way or another, you're going to regret it. So just do it the right way the first time, and then you don't have to worry about it. Let the tenant pay market rent, and if you think that you're going to need a handyman or something like that, find a handyman. Thumbtack or Craigslist or local landlord association meetups or networking events. It's very easy to find a good qualified handyman contractor to do work for you.
Yeah.
Just make sure that they're, get their insurance, get their W-9 and all that stuff. We've talked about that in other episodes. So
yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, those are all our questions here today. Thank you for being on the show. As always, Andrew,
thanks for having me.
You're the brains. I just put little graphics on the screen and ask questions that people already asked before. So I got the easy job.
Yeah, right.
All right. So take care, and until next week, have a good week, and hopefully people picked up a few things. I know I did. And just do it right. Don't make things more difficult for yourself later on,
Yeah. Hey, who do you have for the Super Bowl this weekend?
Oh, man, I don't want to talk about it.
That's kind of my thoughts on it too, to be honest.
No, it's like if I had to actually put real money on it, I'd be hard pressed to bet against the Patriots, but I don't really love them.
I don't know how I feel about that response, man.
Wait,
I don't know about that.
You're a Patriots fan?
No, I'm not a Patriots fan. Were you saying you would go with or against the Patriots?
If I had to actually bet real money on it, I'm probably going to go with the Patriots. My heart, obviously, is in Philly for this. So.
Yeah, I gotcha.
All right, man. Well,
we'll see you next week.
Catch you next week. Take care.